Hello, hello, everyone. Happy Friday, wherever you are. How are things?
Okay. Into the chat.
Well, it's just sitting there waiting for the start listening button to come up. How's everyone doing? Give us some emojis if you're awake. I'm actually pretty surprised we're all still awake. It has been quite the week if you've been following along, because we've been doing a launch week. And so this is day 5. We've made it to Friday. We have survived. How is everyone's Friday going? Now, if you by Friday haven't heard of Supabase and Supabase Launch Week, then great, you had a fantastic vacation off of Twitter. That's good for you. But so Supabase is an open source Firebase alternative. And really what we're doing is we're building some of the features of Firebase, but we're using enterprise grade open source tools, particularly focused on scalability. So we use proven tools like Postgres and a whole stack of amazing open source tools on top of that. And we have actually been talking about a lot of great open source projects this whole week long. And specifically, I want to do a little recap of what we've been doing. Maybe just to give you kind of an idea of what Launch Week is. So Launch Week is basically kind of the YC demo day. So if you're familiar with kind of the Y Combinator kind of program, you work sort of 3 months towards this deadline of demo day where you present kind of your first sort of features to the whole cohort and to potential investors. And so it's this great sort of exciting deadline. And we thought, why only have one day? The week has 5 days, so we might as well launch 5 new things in a week. And so really in the end, it's actually more 10 things in a week. So actually on Monday we had our community day, and what that means is we're highlighting sort of all the open source tools that we contribute to, that we use within our stack. So we've talked about Postgres 14 and Supabase moving kind of new projects to Postgres 14, and with that also the updates of Postgres version 9. We had guests from Kong and Git Guardian and some really amazing developer stories. So that was kind of our Monday. So that was community day, and I'm just sharing kind of some of the tweets that we did throughout the week, and you can kind of look through them, follow up on what we've been doing. Then on Tuesday, we've been open sourcing our dashboard as a Supabase Studio. So that was really highly requested. Folks kind of wanted to see that. We explained sort of why the studio wasn't open source from the start. And you can see this on Product Hunt. Folks really like this being open source now. And actually, if you haven't upvoted it on Product Hunt yet, please use this time, head over there, give us a little upvote. Potentially, there is still the product of the week up for grabs. I think we managed to hit number 3 on product of the day. But yeah, we'd appreciate you jumping over there, if you may, and checking out the open source Supabase Studio. So that was Tuesday. Crazy, only 2 days down. Then on Wednesday, we shipped role level security for our real-time API. Another really highly requested feature. We've talked about kind of all the different ways that was challenging and how we actually made it work in the end. So do check out that blog post. That is really interesting in terms of sort of the technical functionality behind that. And of course, you can dig into the code. It's all open source. So, and then yesterday, we had a really exciting announcement. We announced that Logflare is joining the Supabase family, and we had a really, really great talk with Jace here on the Twitter space. So that is really exciting, because logging is such a high value thing for developers, and kind of knowing what's going on in your database and in your application. And so, yeah, really, really exciting stuff here. And okay, so that was the week so far, and then we have kind of launch week sort of Friday traditions now, which is kind of, okay, one more thing happening on Friday, but really it's this time around it's 5 more things, so it's not really just one thing. And so we're just gonna run you through kind of these things we're working on, and then of course we'd love to get your feedback on them. There's various different ways of doing that. One way of doing that is tweeting at us, and if you have any questions kind of throughout this, you can just tweet at us with the hashtag Super Launch Week, and we will try and monitor that and pick them up live on this space. Okay, and now I've been talking quite a lot. Thanks for hanging in there, but a lot more to come on this Friday. And the first thing we're going to kick off with is GraphQL. Now, folks have been asking for GraphQL. They, some love using it, and so we've thought, okay, let's have a look at GraphQL. And as you probably know, there are kind of a bunch of existing ways out there already for exposing GraphQL APIs on top of Postgres. And we've gone kind of a different approach a little bit. And so we've built a Postgres extension. And well, when I say we, mainly Ollie. And I'd love to have Ollie kind of talk a bit about sort of why we ended up with sort of the extension approach.
Yeah, so we did evaluate the existing options for reflecting a GraphQL API out of Postgres. And then they were largely feature compatible with what we were trying to achieve. But we had some pretty unusual requirements, mainly around resource consumption. So for some context, the free tier projects that we've got, they run on a machine with RPM with 1 gigabyte. And essentially all of that had already been spoken for with or reserved for existing processes. So we needed either a solution with a really, really tiny memory footprint, or it was going to bump all these VMs up to the next level, which when you've got thousands of them becomes pretty significant. Another consideration was that we already had solutions for a lot of the things that the off-the-shelf integrated options had built their own stuff for. So like auth and security, we wanted to make sure that the solution that we ended up with was going to integrate nicely with the existing auth and row-level security options that we've got.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. I wanted to touch on kind of auth and row-level security in a bit. Like obviously that's sort of one of Supabase's superpowers, is exposing kind of the Postgres row-level security via Supabase auth to securely restrict data access to sort of the authenticated user on the client side. Now that's something that is generally not that easy with GraphQL. Can you mention how sort of that works with that extension there?
Sure. So the GraphQL spec itself is totally agnostic to a lot of things that you actually have to care about on a practical sense. So it doesn't give you any pointers for security auth or even like transport. So it's not coupled to HTTP even. The usual challenge if you want to get row-level security to work for a SQL-powered GraphQL resolver is that the outside service that's talking to your database typically needs to have some level of escalated permissions, which then puts it in a position of having to like manipulate the role in the resolvers if you want to get row-level security to apply. We were able to circumvent that issue so since PG GraphQL is embedded directly in the database, we reflect out the GraphQL schema, and there's no special permissions required to be able to build up a query and to execute it. So you sort of get the row-level security stuff for free. Whatever role you get to PG GraphQL with, or you execute the PG GraphQL function with, the row-level security that's relevant for that role is going to apply just automatically.
That's pretty powerful. So that's really sweet to get that out of the box with, kind of deeply integrating with Postgres. Um, yeah, so maybe just kind of quickly wrapping things up, and folks can of course head over to the blog post where there's a lot more detail in kind of how this works. But maybe you can touch a little bit on sort of, what features are you looking to implement next? Maybe is there anything around kind of real time working with, GraphQL subscriptions or things like that? Anything that's sort of interesting that you're looking at?
Yeah, it's still fairly early days, so we have plenty more core things to implement, like mutations, before things start getting more exotic. But subscription is definitely on the radar. It's a tricky problem because it's intuitively requires a persistent connection, but I'm sure we'll figure a way to solve that problem.
Awesome.
Probably as well worth mentioning that as of today, we're releasing it as a open source repository. It's not available on the Supabase platform right now, but Ollie's been making some incredible progress on it, and probably, well, who knows, by next launch week, we'll see how it looks before we release it to all the projects on the platform.
Yeah, that's a good cue actually. So maybe since it's open source, how can folks get involved? Where does this project live?
So it's on Supabase/PG GraphQL. There'll be a link to it in the blog post. It's fully open source, so if you want to contribute, feel free to try it out, open an issue or a PR. Next week, I'll be opening some RFCs as issues to discuss how we want to do configuration and that sort of thing. So any feedback on that would be awesome.
Brilliant. Yeah. If in doubt, just github.com/Supabase. And most of the stuff you'll find there. Thanks so much, Ollie. That's really exciting. And yeah, if you're interested in GraphQL and what that might look like within a Postgres extension, do head over to GitHub, have a look, and we'd love for you to contribute, and also kind of just comment on what features would be interesting. Fabulous. Yeah. So anyone who's just tuning in now, we're just on day 5 of launch week. We've made it to Friday. We are still alive. Pretty amazingly, we will need to catch up on some sleep, but this really has been a blast. So launch week at Supabase means we're kind of launching a new thing every day of the week. And then on Friday, it's generally sort of, one more thing, and actually one more thing. And so today we have 5 more things to talk about. We just talked about the PG GraphQL extension. And now next we want to talk about the CDN feature, and especially around storage. I think that gives you some great performance improvements. And Inyan, maybe you can sort of first off outline what is a CDN and why do we actually need it?
Yeah, hi. So CDN is basically a content delivery network. So it means that usually when you launch a Supabase project, you launch it in a single region. We support, I think, more than 10 regions right now. But at the same time, say if you launch a project in Singapore, it means that your API is hosted there, your database is hosted there, and your storage objects are also in an S3 bucket in that region. Which is great if most of your users are just in Singapore, but most probably you are launching an app or a website where your users are globally distributed, right? So you want to make sure that whatever you launch on Supabase is fast for everyone, no matter where they are. And that's where CDN comes into play. CDN usually means that there are servers all around the world. The CDN we are using, Cloudflare, has servers in more than 250 locations, and we are using that to speed up your Supabase APIs for any project that you launch with Supabase.
Awesome. So maybe how does that sort of actually the CDN make your requests faster?
Right. So there are few different ways in which CDN speeds things up. First is that, yeah, it's just because it has a lot more servers, right? So there is a limit to how fast your request can travel, and if it needs to travel to the shortest possible distance, which is like most probably the closest CDN server out there, it means that your requests will be handled much faster. So um, one is because of the large number of servers, your requests can either be cached at the CDN itself. So, for example, if you this is specifically applicable for storage, where uh, after the initial request, all subsequent requests will be cached at the CDN itself. So it's going to be delivered to the user much faster. And for storage, we have like a default cache time of 1 hour. Uh, Specifically because we knew that when we launch CDN, all assets are at least going to be cached for 1 hour out of the box, and of course you can override this, but it's going to speed up all objects in storage. And not only storage, but it also helps the other APIs as well. As Ollie just mentioned, we offer a pretty generous free tier, but we also need to make sure that all the resources on the server are properly utilized. So now, if a certain portion of your traffic of your storage request is going to be handled directly by the CDN, which means that your server is free to process other requests like your Postgres requests or your auth requests and so on. And so, yeah, that's one way in which it improves performance. And there are other application level enhancements also that we have enabled. So one thing is that we have enabled TLS 1.3, which cuts down the number of handshakes that's required to set up a new connection. So if you usually it takes around 3 round trip times to set up a new SSL handshake. And if your users are in a place where there's a high latency, this can really add up, right? So for each domain that your browser connects to or your mobile app connects to, it needs to do this handshake to get stuff going. And with TLS 1.3, that's reduced to 2. And if a user is a repeat user, it also can resume a connection with no extra round trip times at all, which is pretty awesome because with all these single page apps and these mobile applications, you probably are looking at a lot of repeat users, right? So that's a free thing that you get with TLS 1.3. And it also forms the basis for HTTP 3. Some of you might have heard of HTTP 2. HTTP 3 is sort of the successor of that, and it runs on a protocol called Quick, which has encryption built in. It's far more private. It's faster than HTTP 2 in some cases. It has some other cool features, like, for example, if you are migrating from Wi-Fi connection to a 4G connection, for example, usually it means that your connection will drop as you switch from one network to the other. But with HTTP 3, there are ways in which your connection can be seamlessly migrated. And also, we launched Broadly compression, which is like a much better form of compression than gzip, since everyone likes to load so much JavaScript on their web pages. So, it's better to make sure that they are as compressed as possible. So, yeah, these are a few things by ways in which a CDN helps with performance, and all of these features are available to any Supabase project, regardless of which plan you're on.
Nice. That's really sweet. And yeah, there was a lot of technical detail in there. And so if you're interested in learning more, you can hop over to the blog post we just released, kind of outlining all these new updates. So it's tagged at the top of the space. I think if you swipe once over, you can find it there. And yeah, maybe Inyan, thanks so much. Anything sort of on the storage side? What's coming up? What's next? Once you've caught up on the sleep from launch week.
Yeah, so CDN is the step one for what's next for storage. It helps us enable a lot more use cases for it. So up next, we are looking at some sort of automatic performance optimizations that we can do for all the assets on your website or a mobile app, and also some media transformations, like, say, for example, you want to resize an image, minify a JavaScript file, or transcode a video. All of these things can be done now that we have a CDN, because we have a pretty good caching layer with the CDN, And on cache misses, we can do all these optimizations and transformations for all your assets hosted on Supabase. And Beng from our team has also been working on making storage multi-tenant, which also helps with these sort of next set of features that we have planned, because we can run much beefier machines, because all these transformations I'm talking about are pretty CPU intensive. And by running multi-tenant servers, it sets us up for building these new features that we have planned.
Awesome. That's very exciting. And yeah, it's pretty crazy that, Friday, one more thing. Wow, CDN, that's actually pretty sweet. And in itself, kind of like 5 more things in itself. So very exciting there. Thanks, Inyan, for outlining that. We actually do have a question from the community, not so much on storage. Well, maybe we have a storage bucket, or if we don't, we should create one for it. But there's a question, maybe Johnny is the best person to speak to that. If you, Johnny, if you want to request to speak, in case you can. The question is, where can I get a 4K desktop wallpaper of the Supabase logo / brand? It's actually a great question. When I joined Supabase, I kind of had to make my own, which is sort of what I did. But yeah, maybe Johnny, if there's anywhere that we can outline, let us know. And for anyone who has joined the space, while we're waiting for Johnny to upload the wallpaper to the bucket, we're doing day 5 of the Supabase Launch Week. And if you haven't heard about Supabase before, Supabase is an open source Firebase alternative. We're building some of the features of Firebase, but we're using enterprise-grade open source tools. Particularly, we're focusing on scalability. So we're using proven tools like Postgres and other amazing open source tools, and that we also contribute to ourselves. And we make them easy to use for you, the developer. And so we're just wrapping up Launch Week. Launch Week is basically Y Combinator demo day on 5 days in a week, where we're just launching a lot of things that we've been working on for the past 3-4 months since the last Launch Week. So that's what we're doing right now. We've talked about PG GraphQL, an extension to expose GraphQL for your Postgres database. Then we've talked about the CDN functionality that we've enabled for Supabase storage. That's very exciting. You can catch up on all of that on in the blog post. And Johnny, do we have any updates on that wallpaper, or anyone else? Any ideas on that?
I think Johnny's trying to join.
I saw him in, but he's dropped off. But we have a brand assets folder actually on the website. So on supabase.com/brand-assets is all the logos in high res. So we don't have like official wallpaper, but anyone can, if someone wants to contribute some, then you can get all the logos and things there.
I'll reply with it now.
That's a good point. Okay, that's sweet. Yeah, I actually should look that up. Brilliant. Okay, so we have covered 2 of the 5 things. It is quite the marathon today at the end of this week. Now, the next topic, a lot of folks have asked for functions. Now, functions kind of means a lot of different things to different people. So maybe, Koppel, you've been looking at sort of different ways of doing functions, but first off, I'd love to sort of understand, what do you think is sort of the most valuable use case for functions on Supabase?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. It's definitely our most demanded feature. I think we looked up the other day how many people had sort of signed up for the Supabase Functions Alpha that we announced, and it's something like 2,500 signups just for that. So it's definitely popular. The general sort of themes that we see amongst the reasons why they need functions is either because, and I say this because we often say, well, the likes of Vercel and Netlify and Cloudflare Workers are really good. Honestly, they're outstanding platforms to deploy functions to. So when we ask, we try to find out what issues essentially we would solve that these people have not. So some of the things that we often hear that they want to bundle everything together, much like Firebase, of course, has this huge benefit of being sort of an all-in-one platform. We heard that quite a few times on Hacker News this week as well, a few people commenting. Another one is that they want something that is multilingual, so maybe a polyglot. They don't want to write perhaps in just Node.js or likewise with Cloudflare functions. You can write in Rust now, but or sort of WASM use cases, but they want something more native. So that's a use case. Then the other thing is we ask, well, why would you not use our Postgres functions? And for this one, largely they want to use a lot of libraries, maybe some Node.js libraries or some of their favorite libraries. And there are things that maybe they want to put on the edge, PDF, a lot of computational tasks like converting PDFs, sending email, transactional emails, and using some of the Node.js libraries. So, and also cron jobs, these sort of things. So, yeah, I mean, it's really, it's kind of like asking someone, well, what do you do with programming? It's kind of everything. I think functions is sort of turning into the de facto chuck all your code in. So yeah, these are the questions. Now, Thor, what was your original question? Because you served me a margarita earlier, and now I'm struggling to remember what you first asked me.
Well, first of all, I did not serve you. Your friendly co-founder Ant served you. But yeah, it was really kind of what do you think is sort of the most valuable use case for functions on Supabase? And I guess, I mean, it is to be found out really. But yeah, if you have sort of any hunch or really what you think where you'd like to take it, that would be great to hear.
Yeah, it's a really great question, and to be honest, like we have had a lot of feedback, but of course we want to solve problems, right? So what we've done, and you can find this in the blog post, is we've actually opened an RFC, a request for comments, and inside our RFC repo, in fact, we have opened one with various options, 5 different options for how we would implement it ourselves. And we have chosen the one that we think is the leading contender based on the feedback that we've got. And we've written an RFC, a full design document of how we would implement it. And we really encourage everyone to come in there and comment on, our designs, because we don't want to implement something without really good feedback and making sure that we're solving problems. We're not just solving things for the sake of solving them. Then the other thing that we've done is we've linked inside these RFCs, and in fact, I just pinned it to the top of our discussions. We created a new discussion inside our GitHub discussions, which you can find in the github.com/supabase/supabase. If you go to the discussions there, on the very top, you'll find a discussion called Supabase Use Cases. And there we encourage you to go and either comment on how you would use functions yourself, what you would do with functions, or to upvote one that you see is actually a very, one that sort of matches your use case. So yeah, I mean, I guess to answer your question, Thor, I could give some suggestions, but what I'd love to hear is actually more suggestions from the community and making sure that we really deliver something that is just the gold standard in terms of functions, maybe even better than Firebase. We really think is a great tool. We want to at least be as good or maybe even better with your feedback.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. If we have time, I think it would be nice to maybe mention one or two of sort of the things that we've investigated. I think we've looked at potentially Dino sort of runtime things where you don't actually have kind of the issue with the npm packages, things like that. And I know like Mark on the team actually looked into basically running kind of your JavaScript directly in your database, which I think kind of the working title Superscript. And yeah, Mark, actually, maybe you want to share a little bit sort of on Superscript. What is it? Where does it work? Where doesn't it work? And would you want folks to use it, or any kind of feedback you're looking for?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to talk about Superscript. Well, Superscript really it's just a short script. It's 175 lines that sort of turns on a bunch of other features that have already been in Postgres through PLv8. I kind of think of it as like turning on ridiculous mode for Tesla. Okay, so the Tesla's always been capable of going that fast, but people have to push the button to turn it on, and that's basically what Superscript does. It uses PLv8, which is the JavaScript V8 engine for writing functions. So maybe people didn't know this, or not everyone knows this, but you can write PostgreSQL functions in JavaScript already just by turning on the PLv8 extension. So what Postgres or what Superscript does is it makes it a little bit more like Node.js, a little bit gives it a little bit of the features of Dino. So being a JavaScript developer, one of the things that draws us to JavaScript is the Node.js libraries, and we want to use Node.js require for everything. And so once you run this little Superscript script, you can use Node.js require in your functions. So first of all, you can write a function in Postgres in JavaScript, which is cool. But using Node.js require puts it over the top. Now, not everything's going to work, and you don't have a file system like normally you'd use npm install to install your node modules. So we don't have that. So what we're doing that's kind of like Deno is in your node require call, you just pass an HTTP URL to where that function exists. So it's got to be a Webpack compiled function, or you can use a content delivery network that has all of these stored. But basically, you just pass that that URL to your require. The first time you run your function, Superscript goes out and downloads that function code, loads it into memory, saves it in the database, and then on subsequent calls, it's already in memory, so it's going to be fast. And then if you restart your database, it reloads it from the database, so it never has to go out or rely on HTTP other than the very first time. So it's pretty intelligent in how it caches. And again, not every NPM module is going to work, but a large number work. And we have some of the large libraries in the repo as examples. By the way, let me just mention the repo. If you just Google Superscript, it'll be the first hit up there. But it's at github.com/burgraph. That's my name, BURGGRAF/Superscript, and it's fully open source. It also adds helper functions for calling SQL statements. So you can call SQL statements right from your Postgres database. You can make HTTP calls using the HTTP extension, and it supports everything: get, post, put, patch, delete, header. And then I have examples in there for doing basic authentication. And I know for a fact we're using it for OAuth 2 authentication as well. So one of the biggest things you need for functions is to deal with APIs. That's probably the most common use. And so I use this to make API calls to email transaction providers to send emails. And I even have a repository that you can look at that's open source that shows you how you can send emails, and then also tie into webhooks to check the status of those emails, so you know when those emails have been received, opened, and if they've clicked on a link. All that can be done right from within Postgres using JavaScript. The other thing is when you're developing on the server with Postgres functions, debugging can be difficult, and I'm used to using console log comments in my functions. So what I've done with Superscript is you can use console log commands in your functions and get real-time real-time output in your browser. So the way this works is when you make a console log in your script, it writes a record to a database. And then since Supabase has real-time listeners, we put a real-time listener on that log table. And then you put one line of code in your app, your client app. And then so the way it works is you create a function in your app. Let's say you attach it to a button. You push that button, and it calls that function on the server using the Supabase RPC command, which invokes the function at Postgres. That function writes to the table. Okay, it writes to a log table when it gets to the console logs, and the real-time listener writes the results of those records into your console, your browser console. So it works just like regular console logging. So you hit the button, and then you get the console log immediately right there. So the feedback's immediate. It's even color coded, and it's a pretty cool development environment to help debug your functions. So the workflow is pretty streamlined. Now the pros of doing this, obviously, everything's stored in your database. All of your functions are stored in your database. So if you back up your database, you've backed up all of your code. That's pretty cool. The functions run in the database context, so you don't have to shuttle data. Normally, you run these functions on some other machine somewhere else on the internet. Those have to authenticate and talk to your database, get data, go back to your function, and then the function sends data back to your client application. In this case, the function's running in the database, so it doesn't have to shuttle data. So you can get significant performance increases if you have slow internet connections or if there's a lot of data to be pushed back and forth. It's pretty performant. There's support for JavaScript, and the biggest draw for me is that I know JavaScript, I know TypeScript, I can compile it down to JavaScript and use those node modules. That's a huge plus for me, especially when working with JSON data and all those, those things that you're working with data all the time in JSON. You want to modify that data and put it into your SQL database. Real easy for me to do that in JavaScript. The cons, it doesn't have promises. PLV8 doesn't support asynchronous code, so it's all going to be synchronous, which is how we used to code in the old days before we learned asynchronous coding anyway. I'm not sure the scalability for high loads. I don't think this is something you're going to want to run with millions of users running millions of calls, although we could do some tests to see how well it handles under heavy stress loads. But basically, it's going to be the same performance of calling any Postgres functions minus the performance overhead of PLV8. And the PLV8's been around a long time.
Nice.
Other con,
Sorry.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it is really cool, and I think I urge everyone, if you check out the blog post, there is some videos in there as well, and like check it out. I think there's a couple more approaches we're exploring as well, but yeah, I think for some use cases, Superscript can be super cool. So do check that out. I think maybe should we look at kind of one other use case couple that sort of you're exploring or we're exploring as well. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think it's just worthwhile pointing out the 5 inside the RFC. So basically, the first option is sort of the one that we have to explore, not implementing functions at all and just focusing on the database. Probably not going to fly given the demand for functions itself. So the other ones are either we can do sort of isolates, very popular with Lambda functions, Cloudflare workers, the type that Next.js and Netlify do very well. The second is containerized solutions. So these are ones that fly and maybe Cloud Run, if you're familiar with that, do very well. These are essentially serverless functions, but they wrap whole Docker containers. These are good because they are sort of multilingual and, they are very portable, which is quite important for us. We have to give our users a lot of escape hatches. The sort of fourth option is much what Mark said, just really improving the Postgres functions, and we can provide a lot of wrapping around this, including out the Twitter hangout, and then I'm guessing Rory, basically jumped on as well. So I don't know if Twitter can handle multiple mobile phones running at once. Okay, but anyway, obviously Rory got really sick of me talking about the different options for functions because he's just sick of hearing this question about when we're going to implement functions. So the last two basically options that we've got, you guys can check out the RFC, but much like Mark was saying, we can improve the Postgres functions or, of course, workflows. We've written about this in the past, and we had a few blockers, so we sort of pulled back on workflows until we've cleared blockers. And in the meantime, we've been investigating different options. So the TLDR, in case you can't remember, is all inside the RFC. Just go to our GitHub page, find the discussion, click on the links, and you'll find all the designs that we've got and some comments for you to hopefully help us implement the right way of doing functions.
Great, yes. So please give us your feedback, give us your comments on the RFCs. It has been really, really good fun kind of exploring all the different options of what's possible, but there is a lot of crazy things that are possible, and we really want to make sure we're building the right thing for you and for your use case. So would love your comments, and you can find all the links in the blog post at the top of the space. Now, sorry for
Sorry about this, folks.
Okay, so
a couple of technical issues.
Apparently Twitter's having a launch week as well. Feels like feels like us yesterday. Rose, I don't know, Rose. It's not your internet, right?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I think basically Thor, when he comes back, was about to start on launch number 4. So in the meantime, as well, Rory, I got kicked out and Ant got kicked out well before. So it seems like it's going. But Rose, what we can do is if you drop again, I'll start from the Supabase account. Sound good?
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. Okay.
What's happening?
Well, we Rory
know.
didn't like what you were saying again, so he was just sick and tired of your voice, Thor.
Should I restart the space from Supabase?
I think if it drops again, one of you folks should try.
Yep. Thor, if it drops again, you do it from the Supabase account.
I think really what is happening is that John is messing with us from his bed in Australia.
Yeah, he's clearly.
So what we actually want to announce next is a fantastic course that John has built. And it is, I think, late at night for John, but we have summoned him, we have woken him up, and we really want him to talk about this free Egghead course that he has built. So maybe, John, can you give us kind of a little bit of context on that course?
I'm afraid I can't do that, Thor.
Oh, okay. I seem to have found the wrong audio clip. So, okay. So, how are you doing, John?
I don't know how to respond to that.
Okay, that was the wrong one again. All right, now let's have John actually tell you about this course.
Absolutely. Thanks, Thor. Hey, my name is John. I'm a developer advocate at Supabase, and I have been very, very busy creating this awesome Egghead course where we're going to build a SaaS product using Next.js, Supabase, and Stripe. This will be the most significant and in-depth resource that exists for Supabase so far, and takes you all the way from creating a brand new project to having something live in production that can actually make you real money. The tech stack, as I said, is Next.js, Supabase, and Stripe, and so there is plenty to learn in all of these different areas along the way. Firstly, we have Next.js. Now, Next.js is just so great. They have done an amazing job making it possible to kind of sprinkle in server-side logic where you need it without compromising all that beautiful JavaScript client-sidey stuff that we've all fallen in love with. In this course, we'll cover how to fetch data in different ways in Next.js. So whether that's on the client side, which we can do in any React application, on the server side with something like get server-side props, or at build time using get static props. We'll also learn how to integrate Next.js and Supabase really tightly so that auth logic can be shared between the client and server using cookies. In Stripe, we focus on three main areas. So we look at creating a checkout session, which is how we can start a new subscription. We look at creating a self-serve customer portal so the user is able to update their own payment information and change their subscription. And then how we can listen to webhooks so that Stripe can let us know anytime that data changes on their end, and we can update Supabase and keep it in sync. Now, Supabase is where the real meat of this course is, though. This is where we are going to learn so much. Some of the things we're going to learn are when to use the anon key versus the service key. Obviously, we'll be learning about row-level security and writing policies to enable particular actions, creating Postgres functions to run some of that business logic in the database itself, using triggers to run those functions anytime data in the database changes, how to use Supabase hooks to call Vercel API routes anytime that data changes, and then real-time subscriptions so we can update our UI. As I said, this is a very significant course, and I think a must for anyone wanting to build with Supabase, even if you have experience with it. It's entirely free and will be forever, so just go build some cool stuff and let us know about it on Twitter. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks a million, John, for staying up so late for that. We really appreciate it. Okay, so number 4, and I know we're really coming up on time. We're all quite tired. Thank God it's Friday. We're going to be sleeping a lot. But once we've finished sleeping, what we're going to do is actually we're going to build stuff, because as it is tradition with Launch Week, at the end of Launch Week, we're kicking off another hackathon. And so it is the festive season for many of us. So we're kicking off the holiday hack days. And the holiday hack days is this time real-time themed. So we've launched row-level security for real-time this week on Wednesday. And so we'd love for you to test it out and take it for a spin. So maybe you can build a Santa tracker, see where they are going, or you can finally build that super secure family group chat to bring everyone together for the holidays. Yeah, and John and I will actually be also building some stuff. John, what will we be building?
I'm afraid I can't do that, Thor.
Why
Ain't
not?
nobody got time for that.
Okay, so John doesn't seem too excited yet. I'll try to get him, to convince him, and we'll build some cool stuff so we have some ideas. But yeah, so that is pretty much what we wanted to cover. And Maybe any other updates there, Cole?
No, nothing else that comes off the top of my head. I mean, we've got plenty of other things to share, so please do go jump around into our repos and start contributing. Just remember that especially our dashboard is open source now, and there's a lot of things that we can do there. It's in our main repo, so do jump in. There's a lot of good first issues, I think, that can be solved there. We're going to move a lot of them across to our main repository. So if you're a front-end developer, you know JavaScript, you know TypeScript, please do come in and help us with our dashboard. I think there's a great way just to get involved in open source and contribute to what is becoming a great community, not just because of Supabase itself, but because of you guys. Really, the community is growing very fast and is full of like really, really great builders and a lot of people getting started for the first time coding. So I just want to say a massive shout out to everyone here and in the community. Thanks for all your support.
I think one last thing, you might have seen for the hackathon and for the previous hackathon already, we've been using Made with Supabase, a really great resource to look at projects that are using Supabase. And this is built by one of our Super Squad members, Cernonia. And also Cernonia has been working hard to open source Made with Supabase. So I actually did my first contribution to that as well. It really is a fantastic resource for the community. So just wanted to give a quick shout out to Cernonia for helping us out with that really, really cool page. And again, for building a nice page for the holiday hack days. So that it is. That is it. Okay, I can't talk anymore. I think I need a beer and a sleep. And that is launch week number 3 wrapped. Thanks so much for tuning in, following along, and we will see you fresh next week. We will be live streaming for the hackathon, so check that out. Get involved. You can win some limited edition Supabase swag. As always, you can see our swag and our process on our TikTok. So there's some cool stuff there. And with that, good night from Singapore. Have a great Friday and weekend ahead, wherever you are. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you soon.
Thanks,
good night.
Everyone. Night.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.